السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So this morning I reflected on something really important to me and something that I feel. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Sue. Thank you for joining. Jazakallah khair. So I know that may Allah bless all of you that are joining and tuning into our series. One of the things that I personally had difficulty recently dealing with is sometimes we have our slip-ups, the Ramadan slip-ups, and we make these intentions for doing all these beautiful things, that we want to achieve certain things in terms of how we are going to be kind and how we are going to really focus in our salah and how we're going to really finish all this Quran. And we make all of these intentions, and then there are times that we go through a dip and we go through a time where we're like, that's not how I felt. That's not how I intended my Ramadan to be. And we get stuck in those feelings and emotions, and we're like, man, we're failing. We're not succeeding. So how do you be mindful of those slip-ups in a way that helps you grow? So that was something that I reflected upon this morning. I was going to do mindful listening, which is going to be another live stream. But today I wanted to reflect and share my reflection with you. So first and foremost, what happens when we do slip-ups? We all go through those slip-ups, right? That this Ramadan, we're going to have this beautiful time with my family, and then all of a sudden the kids go crazy, and then stuff happens, and then you're all over the place. So there are 4 ways that we normally respond. That one, we get defensive about ourselves, that we don't look deep down in ourselves and we say it's somebody else's fault, that it is because of someone else, it is because of how they're reacting, it is what they're doing to me. So it is not very empowering position to take, because then you don't really have a lot of choice if you take that position. Number 2 is that you avoid and suppress. We start showing all these emotions, we're showing all these tantrum, we're acting up, and we're not talking about or looking deep into what is really causing all that. So we're avoiding, we're suppressing. The other thing we're doing is just like avoiding depressing, we're denying. That sometimes we're denying the ability to really sit down, reflect, and feeling the emotions, because we don't want to feel bad. We don't want to feel those emotions. And what is happening from denying is that you're kind of not in touch with the reality, because it's a very human thing to experience emotion when you have a slip-up. And it is part of who we are. It is part of what makes us self-aware. And then from that point, how do we grow? Then the 4th thing is that we are connected, but in a way that is not positive. It's a negative, like we're sulking, like, man, I shouldn't have happened. Why did I do this? How did I get into this? And so we get into these modes when we do slip-ups. So I want to share a really amazing study, and it's conducted by Bryans and Chen. And they did a study with people, that how people respond to setbacks, mistakes, and their weaknesses, right? So they had a control group that had no intervention. Second, they had a self-esteem group that whenever they had a slip-up or they had a setback or they're referring to their mistakes, they would be actually focusing, instead of focusing on that, they're going to focus rather on self-esteem or things that are positive about them. What are their strengths instead? So they're looking at their positive things, and they're not really dealing with the setback, so that they feel good and they feel better about themselves. And number 3 was a self-compassion group. And self-compassion group, they were the ones that were actually looking at it from the perspectives of understanding what happened, accepting it, and then having self-compassion to try to see what can they do from that point forward. And they measured these 3 groups on 4 different outcomes. The first one was growth mindset. That out of these 3 groups, who has the highest level of growth mindset, they have the belief that they can change. And number 2 is the motivation to make amends after an ethical slip-up. So, you have an ethical slip-up, and in your mind, you're like, oh man, so now do you have the motivation now to amend? Number 3 was motivation to improve upon the weakness. That what motivation do we have to improve upon the weakness? And number 4 is that all of that comes to, are you going to really put the effort? Are you going to really put the effort to improve? Number 4 was effort to improve. So they found that the self-compassion group, they scored higher in all 4 of these outcomes because they did not deny, they did not suppress, and they didn't avoid their emotions or what really happened, but rather they accepted, they understood, they accepted, and they had self-compassion to try to grow from that point on. So what is self-compassion? Is self-compassion selfish? A lot of people ask that, are we just kind of giving into all these, the pseudoscience of today's generation, and is it like another one of those, thing about like, okay, you just kind of try to feel good about yourself? No, self-compassion is not about being selfish. Self-compassion is mindfulness. Self-compassion is mindfulness because you're first and foremost, you're being mindful of what happened. You're trying to be in touch with your mental and emotional state. What are these emotions you're feeling after a slip up without getting carried away? So you're being mindful, number one. Number two, self-compassion is about common humanity. That as human beings, we're going to slip up. We're going to have this type of things and not getting really stuck in that, but understanding what happened, understanding that, that we as a human being, we're going to do that and connect with that understanding. It's very important because, kullukum khata'un, right? We know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that kullukum khata'un, khayrul khata'un at-tawwabun, that all of you are going to slip. All of you are going to have times when we're going to slip, but then the best of you are those who turn back. We're able to grow from that, right? We're able to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and the number 3 is self-kindness. That self-compassion is mindfulness of emotions without getting carried away, understanding the common humanity that it's a shared experience between all human beings. We will all fail. We'll all go through those stages. And then it's being self-kindness in a way that you are able to grow. That it is the opposite. That self-kindness is not selfish, but it is the opposite of self-deprecation, that you are kind of like beating yourself up to a point that you're kind of taking yourself into this negative zone of that's who I am, or I'm never going to be able to recover, or I'm not going to be able to grow from that. And or defensive self-enhancement, that we're defensive about what happened and we're just like, no, we're not that, we're greater than that. And that's a false reality, that we're not living in the reality. And that's really, really important. And how does that connect to then Tauba? That Tauba is that you are able to be mindful of the slip-up, the mistake, and you understand, accept the emotions, that the emotion should be sincere repentance, that sincerely you're remorseful. And then the second one is intention to change, that you are turning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you have this true intention to change. And this is and then once you make that intention, this is connected to the effort, that now I'm going to put the effort, the strategies, and the environment needed for me to turn back, needed for me to grow from that point on. And that is Tauba. And what you can see in that is super similar to this new research. And it's amazing that it's similar to the self-compassion research. The self-compassion is about mindfulness, which is not denying, suppressing, or avoiding. Just like in Tauba, we don't do that. We are in connection with our emotions and we're in connection with what happened. And then next is that we're not getting stuck, right? That we're not getting stuck of like, oh my God, we're just going into a downward spiral, but we're connected to that shared humanity. That I am going to make mistakes. I'm a human being. Well, oh Allah, I am human. I'm just a human being. I made this mistake and I'm turning back and I'm making the repentance. And then third, the effort, right? That is that we have the kindness, self-kindness, that is the third pillar of self-compassion. It's connected to this, that now that we turn back, Allah's kindness and compassion is always there to receive us. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's compassion is always there to surround us. Inni rahmati wasiyat kulla shay. Your mercy is always there to surround us. Innaka afuwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. That you are ready to forgive. You love to forgive. You love to forgive. Please forgive me. And afu is more than just forgiveness. Afu is someone that is greater than ghafur. That Allah is ghafur, but then added to that is afu, that Allah doesn't only forgive, but He makes everybody that made that mistake forget that you made that mistake. Even angels will forget. Even the places you committed that sin or that mistake will forget. And it will not even be mentioned on the Day of Judgment. There are some people that will come and they will have mentions of all these bad deeds they did, and Allah will forgive them. And afu is a higher level where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not even make that mention. So it's amazing that we are able to have experience that self-kindness not because of we're selfish, but because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's compassion, because of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're able to move forward And Tauba is all about the growth mindset. The first outcome that was measured between the control groups, right? No interventions, self-esteem, and focusing on positive instead, and self-compassion, which was really accepting, connecting to what happened, understanding, and then having the self-kindness to move forward. And that growth mindset is embedded in Tauba. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to practice this beautiful, beautiful thing that Allah has given us, the tool for Tauba, which is not getting into a sulking, self-deprecating mode, but connecting to how do we grow from this point on, accepting our emotions without getting carried away, understanding our common and shared humanity, turning and repenting, and then from that point on, having self-compassion, self-kindness to move forward. I'm going to leave you with one tool, and this tool is about journaling. Whenever you feel difficulty, we all experience that. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, I didn't have an ideal Ramadan day, or I didn't have my ideal relationship, I didn't have my ideal worship. And at that time, you're just kind of beating yourself up all day and you're just feeling down. And at that time, just take the pen and write to this prompt. Imagine you're writing a letter. Imagine that you're writing a letter to yourself from a close friend. So this person, this close friend, he or she knows you very well, really understands you, and this close person, they really want your good. They really want your well-being, and they want the best for you. And you're writing a letter to yourself from that friend that really connects with you, understands you, wants your best. And the prompt that you're going to be writing to is, what would they say to you? What would that best friend say to you about the challenges or opportunities you face? What would that best friend say to you about the challenges and opportunities you're facing? So just for 5 minutes, let the pen move, let the hand move, let the pen move, and see what comes for 5 minutes. And whenever you find yourself in a place where you feel like you're stuck, just practice this tool of self-compassion. That write a letter to yourself from a friend that is really understands you, loves you, wants the best for you, and what would they say to you in a time when you're facing that slip up, you're facing that place where you feel stuck? What would they advise you? Just write that down for 5 minutes and see what comes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to practice this beautiful thing that Allah has given us, which is Tauba, which is connecting to your emotions, understanding and accepting our common humanity, being sincere in our repentance, but also having a growth mindset to move forward through the compassion and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bless Ramadan, everybody. Inshallah, we'll continue. And tomorrow will be our 7th of the 7 live streams that we've done on Mindful Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.